Hello, everybody.
Hi, everybody. So exciting. Welcome. Okay, so a few of our, do you like my shirt? It's just for you, for the graduation, for the GEMS. Because this is the most important part of my life right now. So that's why I wear sparkly shirts like this. Yay. Okay, we're still waiting on a couple of the graduates. So just hang on for a bit. Yes, I can record and share this later, Ruth. And I can share it with everyone, actually. I usually post a link on the same website that on the Detroit Youth Volume webpage that talks about GEMS and the think tank. I like to keep a record of the think tanks on there. So we'll take a couple more minutes before we get started. Okay, do we have all the GEMS here? I think so. Yes. The January-February Teachers Cohort of GEMS is all here. So we are going to start off just giving a little background in case anyone here doesn't know about how this all got going, like the think tank and the GEMS course of action. It all started after Suzuki Association of the Americas released a statement back in June that left a lot to be desired in terms of taking a strong stance against racism and inequity and joining into this global wide movement that was surging at the time. And a lot of Suzuki teachers and people who had distanced themselves from the Suzuki world because of feeling like there was an elitist association with it, came together on a couple Zoom meetings in June, because the board of the Suzuki Association of the Americas invited everyone to come and give tangible ways that they could become more of an anti-racist organization, which was awesome. And we were all really excited about it. And we went to the meeting and there was like over 400 people. And I also never realized there was that many people of color in the Suzuki community. And that many people who considered themselves activists or wanted to see changes in the current status quo of our whole society and do it through art teaching. And at the end of those meetings, I remember encouraging everyone as individuals to take action now and help each other and start collaborating immediately. And I gave out my phone number and said, call me, let's start doing grassroots fundraising so we can do more scholarships and stuff. And then I realized that was, why did I do that? I don't have time to individually chat with everyone in the world who wants to make changes. So then I thought, okay, we can do a gathering in a group, and that's how the think tank came about. And it only happened 2 times so far. It's very loosely gathering just to come up with tangible solutions for individual music teachers to grow more equity in our studios and make a change in the realm of power that we have. And then I realized I think I want to do something more intensely, and because Detroit Youth Volume has been happening for 10 years. I know I've made a lot of mistakes, but other people can learn from those mistakes, and other people can learn from some of the things that we've done well and are still working on. And I don't need to wait. I'm just going to do it. So I started developing this course of action and got a lot of feedback and help from others to pull it together, and got 6 people signed up for the January-February course of action. They became the GEMS January-February Teachers Cohort. Even a retired teacher who is auditing the class wanted to be in the first class. So that's amazing. Monica, thanks for being here. And we have 2 teachers from Detroit. One's a public school orchestra director. One does a program similar to Detroit Youth Volume in Detroit. We have a teacher from the Chicago area with 2 studios, a teacher from Austin with a large studio, and a teacher from Brooklyn working at a conservatory. So lots of different perspectives. And we just came together twice a week, 2 hours Monday, 2 hours Friday, listen to me talk about a certain concept on Mondays. And then Fridays checked in about how our homework was going, because every week we had an action that we were taking so that we could have a tangible result to move closer towards growing our equitable music studio dream. And the concepts were around studio culture and what we would need to do to have a dream studio that would reflect our social justice values more closely, taking tangible steps toward it. And secondly, we talked about expanding access to our studios and starting scholarship funds, and how to do grassroots fundraising campaigns that will refresh a small amount of money annually. That's not too much more weight on everything we already do as teachers, which is a lot. And the third week, we talked about diversifying our studio, which is very interesting because a lot of people were wanting to make our studios more accessible to people of color. I mean, Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And then there was one studio that just had all people of color. And so there's just so many different perspectives in the first GEMS cohort. And after that, we spoke about using equity pedagogy in our classrooms intentionally to nurture changemaker skills in our students, because we all realize that teaching our musical instrument is just the avenue that we're using to nurture our students to make changes that are urgently needed for all of us. And we also spoke about embracing collaboration and inclusivity versus hierarchy, and working more closely with our students and the parents. And I'm so excited for the GEMS to tell you more. But first, we're going to include everyone in the ceremony that we would do every time we met as GEMS, which is to light our candle on the altar and kind of just take a moment to breathe and get ready for the next hour or so. So this is our altar. I'll light the candle first. Then I'll tell you about it. Okay. And we have the flowers for the GEMS graduation. Congratulations. This is a little turtle that represents never hurry, never stop. That's what Dr. Suzuki said. One of the things he used to say. And this is also from Dr. Suzuki that I was given when I was 6 years old, when I wrote him a birthday card, and he sent back something to everyone who wrote him a birthday card. And it's a watercolor painting. On the back it says, "Man is a son of his environment," with his little signature. And if we modernize it, it's humans are products of their environment. And I recently added a couple things, and just to represent some of the things that have happened due to the environment that exists right now. Because Elijah could have been any one of our students. So we want to prevent this from happening ever again. And that's why we're so serious and energized to do this work. And we have a little resistance of the heart against business as usual. And then here's your sign for the GEMS graduating. I added these. Happy graduation. So we light our candle. And something else we talked about in the first week was this, beyond envisioning our dream studios, was how to sustain the work. So if we're going to be winning and serious and actually make progress and not burn out, because there's a lot at stake, we actually need to, along with like never hurry, never stop, means structuring in the self-care as you're not stopping. When you're stopping and taking deep breaths, or like making sure you drink water and eat good food and sleep enough and take walks outside, that's not stopping. That's all part of the process. So we practiced a little bit of affirmations. So I'm going to read a couple of them. If everyone wants to repeat them after me and just try it out, it is relaxing and maybe will be encouraging for you. So you can close your eyes or whatever you want. Just repeat after me. I am growing Equitable Music Studios. Everything that I need to succeed is already within me. I am allowing of myself to be great. I use my head to live with heart. I listen to the wisdom within myself. Doors of opportunity and abundance open to me now. Thank you. So officially, we're into the ceremony now. We did our first little thing, and we are now going to hear from the January, February GEMS. I'm going to put the, wait, first I have to ask Ruth, did you reschedule your lesson? Do you want to go not last? Or is it okay to go last?
They were not able to reschedule, so I do have a 3:30 student.
Okay, I do too. So let's just try to keep it. We're going to end at 3:30.
Okay.
So this is the order of the what people sharing. And I'm going to put the questions in here too. Oh, I hate the formatting of this. I'm going to just put them so you can like see them. Oh, I'm just sending these to Ruth instead of everyone. Sorry. Okay. These are the 3 questions that we're going to hear about. And there's the order. So Bertrina gets to go first. And I think you might be actually the first person that I called to join this class too. I kind of curated it a bit. So really excited that my Detroit colleague, Bertrina, will start out telling us her name, how long she's been teaching, and where she teaches, and the context of her teaching scenario, a little bit about her students.
Hi, everyone. My name is Bertrina Thomas. I'm in Detroit with Clara, and I have a nonprofit, Circle of Arts Performing Arts Academy. So that's where I teach my Suzuki violin, but we also encompass more arts. I've been teaching for 18 years. I didn't realize it had been that long until I had to count. The nonprofit has been running for only about 6 years under the umbrella of the nonprofit. The demographic of my students, so I'm in the inner city of Detroit, and I have upwards of about 40 students that are all people of color, all children of color, but not just children, because my ages are potty trained to 99. So I have a nice size group of adults that are interested and play really well too. So I actually think I had the opposite issue of everyone else coming in. I didn't need to go out to find children. I needed to take some time to figure out how to monetize my time. As you can imagine, with that many students, and they were basically all scholarship students, so I was not getting paid to teach them. And that was okay with me until the numbers got so high and it required so much of my time. And I have a large family, I have 6 children, so it just required a lot of time. I started having to do pods instead of private lessons. So I kind of had to take a step back. I needed to take a step back because I needed to figure out how to monetize it so I can give them the full Suzuki experience, because I didn't want to do pods. I just had to because of time restraints and the amount of people that were interested. I think I've covered the first question. What I
And
did
we
jump
should
out to me on my
tell them
fundraiser.
also that you started playing as a Suzuki kid with Mark Mutter, who's
Oh,
also both
yes.
of our teacher trainers.
How did I forget that? I'm a Mark Mutter baby. He was my first and only Suzuki teacher. I started with him when I was 7. So he is, I always refer back to him. So I don't know how I forgot to mention him today. I actually talked to him earlier about coming today. But yeah,
Maybe
so
I should.
I always refer back to Mark. Um, he's done my teacher training, most of it. So yeah, he's my go-to person. Um, Actually, when I get to the third question, we're going to go back to him for a second too.
Okay.
I'm also doing a fundraiser as a result of the class, which is really exciting. We're up to almost about $1,200 since Monday. So I'm working on getting 2 full
Yay!
scholarships. Yes, I'm excited. At least 2 full scholarships. We had to work on a lot of self-care. That brings me to the second question. That the thing I took away most was the self-care portion, whether that was in the scheduling or pricing appropriately or pricing at all in my situation. Taking time and just making sure I was okay so that I could give my best to my students.
Mhm.
So that's the thing I took away the most, and that kind of just weaved itself through every week, whether it was the culture studio or the studio diversity or studio access or inclusion. It was always a measure of self-care, even those affirmations, just believing that what I needed was out there, and just saying it out loud just kind of brings it to you. So I'm just sitting back now and watching everything come to me, everything that I need to continue doing what I want to do, what my heart wants to do for the people in my community. And
Mhm.
the last question, the practical solutions. Okay, so Dr. Suzuki tells us that every child can, but every child can't if we don't help bridge the breaks in the circle. I always bring things back to a circle because that's how I view uh, music, the arts. So there are breaks in the circle, and if we don't, as Suzuki teachers, we know the magic, we know the beauty of Suzuki, we know what it can do, where it can take them. But if there are breaks, because they are a product of something that they have no control of, which is their environment. If we don't help bridge some of those gaps, and we can't, of course, we can't bridge them all, but if we can bridge who wants to access a bridge, we can help that every child can. So I just encourage you all to just, build the bridge. And everybody won't want the bridge. Everybody won't make it across the bridge because they won't take the commitment. But there are people that want it. There are people that can afford it. They can't afford the privilege of what Suzuki offers, and they will come over that bridge. They will come with it. Out and the part about Mark was I always refer back. Mark gave us a beautiful experience coming up. My first few times overseas were with Suzuki Royal Oak with Mark touring. And that's the same experience I want to bring back. Those are experiences that nobody around me growing up could say that they had. And I want to give the kids that are in the inner city and think that they can't get beyond their circumstance or their environment. I want to teach them a skill so that they can get to places like that as well.
Mhm. Awesome.
Thank you. Anything else, Claire?
And are there any questions for Bertrina right now from anyone else about the teaching scenario or anything? Okay. It's just such a cool and interesting scenario that you have, Bertrina, with just going like all in, never turning anyone away for years, and just trying to teach Suzuki violin to anyone who wanted to at a community center in Detroit, and just trying to make it work. Like, okay, we don't have money for private lessons, let's do smaller groups. And that's exactly what Detroit Youth Volume did for the first 4 years that we were going as well. And in 2016, I realized this isn't equitable to have kids in a private lesson with 3 or 4 kids. That's not what the kids in the suburbs are getting. I want them to get exactly what their wealthier peers are getting. So how can I do it? And for us, it ended up that we had to cut out 7 of our students at the time who weren't meeting the attendance policy. And that it broke my heart. And this is why I understand like what Bertrina has been going through for so long, and making the decision to have a mixed income studio versus just one of all kids who can't pay. Because you don't want to punish the kids for just being born into a cycle of poverty, but realizing that you want to give the students what you want to give them requires them to be able to show up every week. If you want to give them that resilience and that ability to collaborate with others, those change making skills that are bigger than the violin. That it requires them to be able to make it to lessons. So we have to make hard decisions, but the point is to figure out how to maintain the capacity to keep doing the work. And for Detroit Youth Volume, that looks like we have 9 kids on scholarship and we have 9 kids who are paying full tuition, and that's our model right now. And that took a long time to sustain that type of fundraising too, and I'm still working on it, but we're pretty close. And it's been an honor to share the experiences and come up with ideas for Bertrina Studio as a group. It's already going so well with the fundraiser, and the link is in the chat. People, go and give a little bit if you can, because that's what grassroots fundraising is. It's like individuals giving $5 or $50, or older, more wealthier people than us maybe are giving $500 a month, maybe. You never know. The abundance is coming.
Sarah, can I just give a public thank you to
Yes,
Ruth and
yes.
Ed for sewing into my fundraiser too. I appreciate you too.
Yeah. Collaboration, emergence. And then as part of Bertrina's graduation ceremony, I just want to invite everyone to send her off with a phrase from your heart. Because at the first week of GEMS, we wrote down our vision stories for our dream studios that we're going to reflect like who we really are authentically. We'll be so proud of these studios when they become like this. And then we read them to each other. And afterwards, I asked each one of the GEMS, what do you need to hear to make it to this day when this vision story is like real? And most people just said, I need to hear my community say, I believe in you. So if everyone can just come off mute right now and say, I believe in you, Bertrina. Let's send her off into the world after her 6 weeks of work.
Bertrina, you're outstanding.
Yes.
I believe in you, Bertrina.
I believe in
I
you.
believe in you.
I believe in you.
Thank
I
you all.
believe in you.
Can I be like you when I grow up?
Of course, only if I could be like you too, Mary.
Awesome. Okay, I'm crying. Oh my gosh. So happy for you, Bertrina. Thank you for teaching me. And we now welcome to the stage Ed. And we would love to hear you tell us, oh no, I'm sorry. It's Danny. I try to go in alphabetical order. Okay. Danny from Austin. Tell
Hello.
us your name and how long you've been teaching, where you teach in the context of your teaching scenario.
Great. So my name's Gee Cordova. I'm here in Austin, Texas. Hi, Abby. And I've had kind of a dual life for a long time. I was teaching in public school for 10 years and really loved it, and simultaneously worked in privately. And I think some of my students told me that we had a 12 or 13-year anniversary like a few weeks ago. So I've been teaching about 15 years here in Austin. And the studio that I work with, we have 5 teachers right now. And among us, we have 60 students. And we do have a fairly diverse demographic. It just doesn't represent the demographics of Austin as a whole, especially I was reading an article about how everyone's home prices are still going up, even though we have to boil snow for toilet water still. And it's just crazy to me. But a lot of communities and Austin natives are being kind of pushed and marginalized, and not being able to participate because of taxes and gentrification and a lot of things. So I always had felt that my dual existence in public school and private life it was just 2 different sides of the same coin, and that in the public school I had a platform to be able to reach every single kid, and my private studio was just like this separate thing that didn't really relate. And so when I decided to leave public school teaching to start the foster to adopt kind of route and stay at home for a baby, then it was just even more evident that these were things that I had now time for. And when listening to Clara, and when we had that first conversation, it was just really encouraging to know that there are actionable things that you can do. And yeah, just so the thing that we had talked about yesterday was, and I thought this is like the light bulb moment. It was just like so easy in my mind because a lot of so I told our studio about our ideas to kind of incorporate 4 scholarship spots, and everyone reached out and they were so happy about it, and like the parents, and I think a lot of those parents come from a place of means and feeling like they can do that, but they're also very active. And we have students who they took it upon themselves during the pandemic to reach out and create a little kind of network of students who were going to work with public school students who didn't have private lesson instruction, and they were going to be like peer tutors to them. And it kind of just networked through all of the kids that they've met through institutes. So even kids that they hadn't met, but in the Dallas area and just around. So they kind of have started that and coordinated that. And so I just felt so encouraged by that, and also felt really terrible that my students were doing more than we were as a program, And so, but when talking to Claire, it just seemed everything was so simple, So we were going to raise 4 scholarship spots because our tuition generally goes up a little bit to cover cost of living. And so we're just going to raise everyone $20 a month, and that will create 4 spots. And it was that simple. And so, and we will do fundraising outside of that, and try to offer some people who might not be able to do that change, but we're going to try to open up there you go. So we're trying to open up 4 scholarship spots, right? And so, and then we already have instruments that have been volunteered through. So many kids have these instruments that they don't need to use, that they were kind of in that rental quality. And I know that our shops in town, just from working with them through the public school system, have always been really generous. And so I know that, so I need to reach out to them to see, like, could we purchase instruments or trade in instruments and have an unlimited trade-in type situation where we can get whatever size we need to, and just, and then hopefully let people leave with a nice instrument, if they get through our program. So we're just kind of at this point focusing on those types of things, but I feel a lot more encouraged about not living this kind of dual life. Like, it's for everybody, but, I want to make sure that our teachers have an income. And Clara shared how it's actually so beneficial, when you were saying, if you have a scholarship spot up and then someone leaves the studio, your teacher's still getting paid because there's a scholarship spot, and you can just pull someone in. So it's kind of a really sustainable way of building a studio. So I think that was really one of the ideas, just in terms of like the logistics, because I think all of the ideas that you shared are very well thought through, and more the theoretical things, and then the idealistic things make sense to me, but it just didn't make sense how to incorporate it, just because I hadn't had mentors that have had a model like this. So I think that was the thing that really jumped out at me. So, and okay, so I think that's basically it. And the other thing that I came out of this was realizing that I do have a voice and a platform that I didn't really realize that I might have had. It's kind of this weird coincidence, but I just got like some notes randomly from people, and I just thought, wow, I like can have a positive impact on people in ways that I might not realize. And so I think that I can step into that and feel encouraged that I have the ability to do what I need to do to make that happen. So,
Yes.
did I answer the questions? I think I was just babbling.
You always think that, and you need to stop saying that about yourself too. Come from a place of power, Danny. I'm smart, and what I say is clear. Let's add that to your affirmations for the morning.
Adding it now.
So the questions were, what ideas jumped out at you the most with the most impact? I think you answered that. Did it make sense what Danny said about the scholarship slot to everyone? Like, the grassroots fundraising plan is in place, so you just recruit another student in need. And we had like a little method that we use in GEMS for recruiting new students to make it really easy and keep the attrition down. So you can just pop in the new person and everyone's still getting paid. So it's actually like a business plan in a way. And then he shared his practical solution with his raising of the tuition. And yes, he's a rock star. So let's send Danny off into the world after his 6 weeks of work, where he focused on growing Equitable Music Studios, and will continue doing so from here on out. And say, Danny, we believe in you.
Go, Danny.
We believe in you.
We believe in you, Danny.
Danny, we believe in you.
Thank you.
Go, Danny.
Yay. All right. And now we welcome Ed to the stage, for real this time. And please share your name, how long you've been teaching, where you teach, and the context of your teaching scenario. And let's start with that.
Okay. So I'm Ed Kreitman, and I am the owner and the director of Suzuki Music School in the west suburbs of Chicago. And if you don't know the demographics of Chicago, the west suburbs are a very affluent area. And I have 2 studios, one in Western Springs, and the other one is further west out in Naperville. And I've been teaching probably for about 50 years, but I started the school 40 years ago. Basically was just focusing on doing what I was doing, trying to develop a school, trying to develop my own skills as a teacher, and basically just taking, whoever knocked on our door and not really noticing like what our demographic was. Our community is fairly highly populated with white people and affluent people, and kind of made it easy to run a business there. And I think maybe the first time I really started thinking differently is actually quite a while ago, and I think about it because I was very, very good friends with Michelle George Higa. And when she started the Rainbow Strings in the East Cleveland Public Schools, I really heard a lot about that from her and how that worked. And I always kind of wondered, was this kind of a model sustainable? And in their case, it was not. They didn't know all the tricks that Clara knows about fundraising and sustainability. And so, for a while, she and Diane Sloan were teaching for free. And then, they finally just said, well, we can't do this anymore. And they kind of burned out and the program died. And then my interest kind of shifted again when I started. I'm also a teacher trainer for the Suzuki Association. And I started going to Brazil to do teacher training there. And what I found there was that a lot of the Suzuki teaching happening in Brazil is happening in social projects. So it's a more of a like El Sistema type environment. And there were a couple of programs in particular that I became very involved in, that I'm still very involved in. One is at the Baccarelli Institute in Sao Paulo, and they have just instituted this amazing Suzuki program there for these children who live in the worst part of Sao Paulo. And the Baccarelli Institute is, it just in the way that I envision it is that the neighborhood that it's in is just this very impoverished place and very dangerous place. And then these two buildings that kind of rise up out of it in the middle, and they're like, heaven for these kids because it's a safe place. It's where they go after school. And there's so much love in that building, and all the teachers there are just an amazing, amazing program. So that really, the work I was doing there really made me start thinking about, what am I doing in my own backyard, and how are we meeting the needs of our community? And that's when things started shifting. And I think of course, the big action moment was George Floyd and the response from the SAA that Clara talked about at the beginning, and realizing that that I have a platform, and that this is like it's a systemic problem in Suzuki. It's not just my school. But I do feel that the majority of Suzuki teaching tends to take place in upper middle class communities, and it's not something that's accessible to very many. We want to say every child can, but really it's not available to every child. So one of the first things I realized, and one of the most immediate changes that I knew I could make, is that I do a tremendous amount of teacher training. So I just made the decision that from now on, from that moment on, I've already done it now 4 times, every teacher training class that I offer will always have a scholarship spot, a full scholarship spot for a BIPOC teacher. And I want people to know that. So if any of you know of a teacher of color who wants to take teacher training, and I don't care if it's their first time through the course or if they're repeating it, I just want to lift up those teachers that we are not seeing. Because I will tell you this, I've been doing teacher training for 30 years and I can't ever remember having a black teacher in my class. That is the truth. And that's kind of frightening to me. And now I have somebody in every class, and it's so wonderful to see those faces and knowing that they're going to go out and be a role model for children of color. I just think this is one of the problems, is that the kids don't see themselves in the teachers. So that's an immediate crisis, and something that I can very easily work on. And this is kind of tying into another lesson that I learned from Clara, is that offering a scholarship isn't about you teaching for free. It's about the teacher that's doing the work is getting compensated for their work, and the funding is coming from somewhere else, and there's a flow through. And in the case of these teacher training classes, I just raised the cost of the class a little bit so that everyone in the class is supporting having one scholarship. And they don't know that. I tell people that, but that's not really important. It's kind of like what Danny did in his studio. So our next step, our work. Oh wait, I want to say something else about what stood out for me for the class, because I told this to Clara in our one-on-one that we had yesterday. It took me I think about 3, maybe 4 sessions into the course before I got it, because I sort of was expecting this to be kind of like the teacher training classes that I've been doing online, where it's a lot of lecture and discussion, and we're working through stuff. But actually, this is a workshop. You come to the class and you do the work in the class, and yeah, there's homework, and you have to do that too. But there's time in the class to actually do the work. And once I figured that out, I just so look forward to going, because it was like, oh, I've got these 4 hours of my week that's carved out where I can come and I can ask questions of the other guys in the class, and I can ask Clara I've been thinking about this, but what do you think? And this has been an amazing experience for me. And I feel like I've learned, I feel like I've had these ideas in the back of my mind, but always the questions that come around them. And so many of those questions got answered in this workshop. So I want to say that. So anyway, our plan for the future is we're going to start with small steps, but our plan is to add 3 full scholarship students to each of our locations. So we will have 6 students, and I'm not going to be so concerned about whether they are students of color or just students of financial access, because we have a fairly homogeneous population, and I'm sure we do have some, we have a handful, I'm going to say maybe 5 Black students right now in our population. We have a huge population of Indian students in our Naperville school, but they are all affluent. None of them are needing a scholarship. But we do have people right in our community that we're not reaching. And so our goal is to find those 6 students. And that we have 3 avenues of fundraising that we've looked at. One is, I wish that I could do what Danny did, but with 300 students, I'm not sure everybody would be happy about the uptick. But we are going to we're going to tell everybody what we're doing, and we're going to ask people to make donations. And we're going to see what comes in from that. But then we already have in place some scholarship, or some, I should say, fundraising events that we do at the school. Every year we do a Christmas concert that is a fundraiser for something, Katrina victims or Puerto Rico or whatever the latest catastrophe is. We send off a check for $10,000 or $14,000 to whoever needs it, because that's what we can raise in one night. And our Allegro performing group also has always had a mission where we take our show to an organization that is providing music instruction for underserved community, and we go and do a benefit concert for them. But we're just going to make that benefit concert be at home in our own community, and we're going to put some of that towards our fundraising. So I feel like the money part is not really going to be the problem. And the interesting part is going to be finding the kids in our community that are the right fit, where the parents are going to be involved, and that it's going to be sustainable for them. I don't think the financial part will be the problem. I think, did I answer all the questions? I think that's it. Oh, and the other thing really that Clara talked to me about is this, that I feel like the biggest change that I'm going to make is in the teacher training. That I feel like for a long time in Suzuki, we have been very focused on these ideas about parent education and about the triangle. And I have now seen that there are so many situations where Suzuki method works beautifully, where there isn't even a parent involved in the situation. And that in order for us, I feel like we're at the sort of intersection of the SAA needing to work on their DEIA, diversity and access, and us looking at how can we change the curriculum to make it broader and not have this narrow focus of parent, child, teacher that works really well, but why can't we expand on that? So that's really where my interests are, and I feel like I do have a platform for that in the teacher training. And I've already started doing that. Every class I teach, I show people the work of the Beccarelli Institute as a model for another way that we can do Suzuki teaching very successfully. I think that's it.
Yay. We believe in you, Ed.
I believe in you, Ed.
I believe in
You, Ed.
You're a
Yeah.
rock star, Ed.
Yeah, absolutely.
We support you, Ed.
Thanks.
Love it. All right. Side note, if anyone doesn't know what El Sistema is, it's started in Venezuela, and it's basically a loose network of music education programs that want to create social change through music. And there's now an El Sistema USA network that I'm part of, and Detroit Youth Volume is part of. And although in a lot of scenarios, El Sistema has meant like group scenarios or orchestra stuff, it doesn't have to be that. For us, we have a mixed income program that we're a Suzuki program and we have scholarships. So we're not like a program for poor kids. Everyone gets the same regardless of income. Everyone benefits who's in the classroom, because all kids need to learn to collaborate with kids of all backgrounds, because they're all going into the world of multiculturalism and different types of people all over. So everyone is benefiting, and it's much more sustainable to have a program that's mixed income. So that can be like another El Sistema scenario. It doesn't have to be just group and outreach. Just wanted to make that little note. And I think it's also like there's a rich opportunity to have more partnerships with El Sistema between Suzuki and El Sistema right now. Just another thing we can consider. They have conferences and stuff. And okay, we are going to bring our next gem onto the stage, and her name is Martiza, and she's also from Detroit, orchestra director, and I will let her tell you more. Welcome, Martiza.
Hi, everyone. My name is Martiza Garibay, and I am also from Detroit. I'm the director of orchestras at Detroit School of Arts, which is a public fine and performing arts high school in downtown Detroit. I teach all levels of strings there, even though we are considered the fine arts hub in Detroit Public Schools. There is a huge gap in especially string music education in the city. A lot of times we'll see programs that get funded for like elementary school students, and then things kind of drop off in middle school. And I get students who say things like, oh, I really want to be in the orchestra, and I played violin in 5th grade, but I haven't played since the 5th grade. So I've been offering, I started doing this 2 years ago. I started offering introductory string music classes for my high school students. And I also teach intro to music theory, and I try to give my kids as many experiences as I can afford them. Let's see about me. I'm also a sound artist, and I live in the city with my 2 dogs and my partner, and I enjoy red wine and long walks. Some of the ideas, I made a list for myself, but I'm going off script because I realized about 2 minutes before I logged into Zoom that one of the major ideas that made like the biggest impact on me over the last 6 weeks is mindfulness practices, and like mindfulness practices for my self-sustainability as a music educator. Those things I began implementing into my daily practice. Every morning I wake up extra early to be by myself and have my coffee and say my affirmations and focus on breath. I started doing yoga every day. I started a Yoga with Adrienne challenge online, and I'm on day 11.
Yay!
Day 11 straight days. I am impressed with myself there. But yeah, those practices for self-sustainability, I didn't realize were so necessary for just showing up. And when you are calm and put together and confident in yourself, and you present that to your students, then they display those qualities within themselves and their playing and their practice. Some other things that I took away from the class that I just think about and love and have post-it notes on my studio walls about our conversations regarding access and like our conversations regarding change maker skills and higher order thinking skills. I told my students that I was taking this GEMS course, and their reaction was like, oh, good for you. Like, that's awesome. I'm really glad that you're taking time for yourself. And I was, they're high school students. So it was just really sweet to hear that support from them, because that tells me that I've been doing my job in supporting them outside of our daily practice. We support each other, and that mutual care and respect is apparent in these situations. A practical solution for individual music teachers. I think this is something that everybody can do. I've been putting together a list of community resources for my students. My orchestra is an all-Black high school orchestra. In my 5 years at Detroit School of Arts, I've had one white student in my orchestra. Our school population is about 98% Black. And my students come from a wide variety of socioeconomic places. I have some students who live in extreme poverty, and I have students that do not, that live in the suburbs and like drive into the city for school. So making a list of just resources, community resources that may not even involve music. Things like medical information that pertain to like COVID-19 testing and vaccine information, local food assistance, local housing assistance, local news, academic assistance, mental health and counseling assistance. Having a place where all of these things are available. I used to just keep them to myself, like in a little binder on my desk. And I realized rather quickly that students, if they're experiencing hardship at home or within themselves, don't always feel comfortable like coming to you and saying, hey, I'm sorry I'm late today. The bus didn't show up. And then I missed breakfast at school, and I missed my first hour math class. And now I'm frazzled and I'm hungry and my shoes are wet. Providing just basic community assistance information for my situation is extremely important. Things I do within my classroom now are, just to go on this further in a musical sense, is I've made a commitment to myself to represent and represent non-white or BIPOC and queer composers and artists, like people like Jesse Montgomery, Daniel Bernard Romain, Wendy Carlos, Julius Eastman, Maria Chavez, people like that, people from all times and places and genders and ethnicities and everything. Really also artists that push the bounds of like canonical Western art music. I'm not a Suzuki trained teacher. I've never actually taken a Suzuki class, but as a result of being a GEM, I have made a commitment to myself to take some Suzuki teacher training, because that's, it seems like a really, really awesome community, and the people I've met in this course are amazing. And like, why not take some, well, teacher training can never be bad. you know? So I'm gonna go for it. I think I answered all the questions. Did I get everything? Cool. Thanks, everybody.
I think so. Did you, oh my gosh, I forgot to set the timer for you. I just wanted to share like specifically about the type of work that Martiza does with her students. She just texted me an example of 3 weeks for her kids before COVID. Right before COVID, my kids played a sold-out concert with the National Arab Orchestra on a Friday, went to String Day at Wayne State, and the following Monday played the finale from Chike Serenade, and then a hip-hop songwriting workshop at Third Man Records store 4 days after that. So just exposing her students to all the different things that are connected to music that they could go into possibly, or just expanding their minds to all the different possibilities for them and helping them find out what they really want to do with their instrument, or at least giving them life skills like collaboration and innovation that they need to thrive and survive in Detroit and the rest of the world. So we're so proud of you, and I believe in you, Martiza.
Great job, Martiza.
Great
We
job.
believe in you,
I
Martiza.
believe in you,
I
Martiza.
believe in you.
So fun to hear everyone's voice. I'm imagining us like in a circle right now in a room, or maybe we're like on a beach outside and then we all jump in the water at the end. Okay. Okay, now we welcome Monica to the stage, and Monica is the retired public school music teacher who is auditing this course, and she has some things to share as well, even though she's no longer teaching. So
Thanks,
welcome.
Claire. And thanks for inviting me. You're the one who you wrote me a little note and said, do you think you'd like to join? So I'm not sure I would have on my own presumed I could. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I live in Tacoma, Washington, and I retired in June after 42 years of teaching. In the late 1970s and early 1980s is when I did all my Suzuki training. I studied a full year with taking a Suzuki Pedagogy class with a teacher that had studied with Dr. Suzuki in Japan, and then did my institute trainings. And I was teaching public school orchestra at the time, but when I got involved in Suzuki, even though I applied what I was learning, I found that it wasn't, that I needed to be with like others who were doing what I was doing. So I participated with a community music center that had and was asked to develop an outreach program to private and parochial schools. So I did Suzuki for 7 years, and I became more interested in going back to public school teaching where every child has access or the opportunity, or at least try and provide that. So I ended up teaching public school the last 30 years here in Tacoma, and in a highly diverse school district. And in my school, the percentage was 86% of low income, which means they qualified for free or reduced lunch. Hispanic percentage was 38%, 17% Black, 14% Asian, 12% white, Pacific Isle, 5%, and 22% non-English speaking students. So that gives you an idea of the diversity. After I switched back to public school, I dropped out of the Suzuki Association because there was nothing there for me. I mean, there was no reason to continue in my way of thinking. But in June 2019, I went to an ASTA workshop, and Dr. Lori Scott was the presenter, and she was fabulous. And that's the first time I heard of Suzuki in the schools. And I thought, that's where I belong. So I rejoined in the association and got caught up on what was going in Suzuki in the schools, and thought if I'd known that existed, I probably would have stayed in the association and used it as a resource. But I applied all my Suzuki training to what I was doing. Another part, when we went online instruction last spring, I discovered that in order to communicate with my families, I had to send out notices in 8 different languages, because I really was unaware of how many household languages were different than English. So it just gives you an idea of how diverse and rewarding it has been for me teaching in a really highly multicultural, diverse community. So that's my background. One thing Bertrina said early in our GEMS course that has just stayed with me, Bertrina, was she said one skill set can change the trajectory for a child. And I've seen that happen over and over again. And it's just really true. And the work is so important. So thank you for that, Bertrina. Did I share enough? Well, there were so many things that impacted me, but one of them was when Clara talked about the higher order thinking skills and Bloom's taxonomy. It was revised in 1990 to use only verbs rather than nouns when it originally came out. And those are action words. So I think of action, the evaluating, critiquing, analyzing, comparing, and helping kids develop those skills, which will change their lives and help with the social change we're talking about from what, part of our reason for teaching and involving them in music and bringing them to higher levels where they can communicate and play with other kids and just all the good things that go with teaching. So the idea that I have that I thought I could possibly share, since I don't have a studio or students anymore, is that I think that looking at the organizations in your community that have the same goals as you. So I looked at my Tacoma community, which I really would guess that every community has something similar. But networking and collaborating with them, I think will help get the word out that you're interested in opening up your studio to students who don't have access to that advantage. One of the big programs that worked actually in my school was Symphony Tacoma had a core group of musicians who went out, string players, it was strictly for strings, went out to middle schools and high schools that were high needs and worked with the students. They did anything that was needed. They'd play side by side with the students. They do chamber music coaching, master classes, etc. And they also did social emotional learning skills with them. And that's really made a huge difference with my kids to see these professional musicians, and they were just terrific people on top of it. But that was their whole goal, was to reach these kids. And then a local, the Tacoma Community College also hired one of those symphony musicians who are part of that. It's called Symphony to You program. They hired them to help bridge high school students who are first generation students, especially, to go to enroll in community college, study with that teacher, and thereby give them a potential career pathway. And then the Tacoma Youth Symphony is committing their scholarship program to students of color. And they really are focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that's the goal of their scholarship program, which is coming up. They have a new executive director. And when she came in, that was her focus. And there's a community arts organization called Tacoma Arts Live that provides after school programs for the kids. They provide snacks, transportation. Sounds a little bit like your music center, Bertrina. And I've been invited. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do it, but I've been invited to do a string program there. So that's another way to do it. And we have a voter initiative, voter approved initiative that creates a city arts tax, and there's funding every year. So you can apply for that every year to fund what, and it's particularly designated for underserved youth. And then we talked in our class about approaching music teachers in the schools. If you're looking at elementary, kindergarten, first, second grade, the music teachers are a good resource, but they also usually get input from the classroom teachers. So just know if you're doing the elementary that you're going to be music teachers plus the classroom teacher, because they really know the students and the families the best. If you're looking at secondary, sending a letter out to seek students for your scholarships, that can go directly to the orchestra teacher. And then the ways that I incorporated successfully Suzuki in the schools model was that outreach program that I told you, through a community center that contracted with the schools. And then the community music center was the home base for group lessons and for big events. The other is I taught an elementary class where every fourth grader had a semester of violin instruction. And that was a modified Suzuki program that I taught in. I learned about it when I taught in Maine because they did it in third grade. And then when I came to Tacoma, I incorporated it into fourth grade. You choose the level before your public school string program begins. So our program begins in fifth. So I taught fourth grade in Maine. The program started in fourth. So we started in third. And then the other ongoing program, gosh, it started in 1940s, University of Texas, Austin, is the String Project. There's now a National String Project Consortium. You probably all know about it. But there was this terrific article that looked over the last 20 years of its existence, and it came out in the American String Journal. And it tracks the diversity and what kind of inclusion models they have. And it's just really a fantastic article and something ongoing now, but it is a university-based program. And I think, Martiza, you talked about being in the String Project at Wayne State. So those are all the organizations that are doing what we're trying to do. And if you're able to plug into any of them, I think it's a great resource for targeting students to include. I think that's it.
Awesome. Thank you for growing Equitable Music Studios, Monica. I believe in you.
Thank you.
I believe in you, Monica.
You're a rock star. Thank you, Monica.
Thank you.
I believe in you.
And I did paste that whole list that you sent to me, Monica, into the chat. So there's some links and stuff. And now we are welcoming our last gem to the stage, Ruth from Brooklyn. Welcome.
Thank you, Clara. I'm Ruth. I currently live in Brooklyn, New York, and I've been on the faculty at the Brooklyn Conservatory I'm in my 7th year. This is also my 7th year of being a New Yorker. I taught in St. Petersburg, Florida for 13 years before that. So I've been teaching for 21 years. In Florida, I was not part of a faculty. There are so few teachers in Florida, Suzuki teachers. It's hard to even have a sense of a community of Suzuki teachers. And that was part of why I needed to move somewhere else. I was very hungry to be part of a community and part of a faculty. I was tired of running everything. And I wanted to just be part of a team that taught. That's shifting again now. I currently have in my studio here, I have some students that are outside of the Brooklyn Conservatory, but I'm going to just focus on what I do here. So I have 20 students here, ranging ages 4 to 13 in my private studio. I also teach 5 groups, and those range anywhere from age 7 to I'm not sure who my oldest is, 16 or 17 years old. So I've got some teens in groups. Our groups, because of COVID, are a bit smaller because we knew that just would be easier to manage over Zoom. So that's why I have 5. I've had the same number of group students in years past, but not necessarily spread out over 5 different classes. But I have total, in those 5 groups, I have about 26 students who cross my path every week in group and theory class. We do group and theory combined. I did not gather any ultra specific, but just like by my best estimation, in my private studio, out of the 20 students, I would say 9 of them are non-white. And in the groups, about 10 out of the 26 are non-white students. I also teach Suzuki Early Childhood here. Our organization is huge. Our department, the Suzuki program, is just one of 5 departments. We have a music therapy program. We have a community music school. We have music partners, which partners with public schools. So it's a very large organization. And the Suzuki department is just one of those things. Our program has about 250 students total. And I did not look up the racial demographics of the whole program. I just gave you what I work with. Pre-COVID, I also oversee the ensembles program, which encompasses 2 small string orchestras and some small chamber groups. So I lead, meaning conduct, one of those groups and also coach chamber music. So I cross paths with a lot of people in our program in the bowed strings. Our program also has guitar, flute, and piano. But any instrument that can play in the string orchestra, a lot of those kids cross my path. A lot of those families I work with. Out of my early childhood classes, I needed to look back at last year because although we had some really committed families that when the city shut down, they were willing to go online and continue the routine of participating in early childhood classes over Zoom, the numbers trickled away as the months went along and Zoom fatigue set in. So our program that offered on a weekly basis 5 different classes of early childhood is now down to 1 class. I have way too much on my plate, so I gladly volunteered to let my 2 classes go. So we have 1 class, but a year ago, pre-COVID, I was teaching in 2 classes, and out of those 10 families, there were probably 3 non-white students. Our program as a whole, visually, looks very diverse. It's just very diverse color-wise and not financially at all. Our program is expensive, and we're plopped right down into a wealthy area. So although we might have racial diversity, which still could be better, I'm just saying it looks like something that's not really, it might look like we have diversity on all levels, but we don't. So our program is really, I'll just say it, it's impossible for a lot of families. Let's say some family wants to look at the website and looks at it, and we would never even know they looked at it, because I can tell you, If I could not afford that tuition and there wasn't something clearly stating we have full scholarships available, I would not even sign up for the orientation night. I just wouldn't. I would look at that and go, we can't do that, and I would move on. And that's what I'd like to stop that. I would like for our face that people see when they look, either when they pass the building and there's information right there at street level that they can pick up and have in hand, or they look online, or even word of mouth. I want it to be known that we have full scholarships available for students who would have no way to afford it. We have increased dramatically as a program-wide, in addition to the efforts that I'm doing to fundraise for full scholarships. We have, I want to say 1.5 to 2 years ago, made the decision to designate our Suzuki benefit, which is part of our big festival concert every year, is a fundraising benefit, and to designate those funds to go toward financial aid. But a clarification or just a new evolution of that is the fundraising that I'm doing that is actually for full scholarships, not just a little bit of help here or there. I want those communities that are underrepresented in many, many different ways to know that this can be possible for them. What else? Things that jumped out to me about the course. I just was overwhelmed at the new awareness that I have of all the different ways that my classmates are doing this work. You know, if you are a part of the Suzuki world, the Suzuki violin world, which, you know, I think it would be fair to say that the violin part of Suzuki is, you know, a big chunk of it. It's very easy to just, you know, only have an awareness of all things violin and all things in a program like mine, or like Ed's is very similar to our program, and to really not have an awareness of how people are doing this work in other scenarios, like what Bertrina's doing, like what Martiza's doing. So all of this was encouraging and inspiring to me. They are, you know, just amazing resources for things that I want to start looking into. Bertrina's had a nonprofit before. You know, I know nothing about that. I'd love to learn about that. Now I know somebody to hit up for information. Martiza has shared some of her creative ideas for workshops and projects that would never have occurred to me to try. They're just outside of anything on my awareness. Clara has been a wealth of resources, of writers, big thinkers, resources, things to look at, books to read, so much more than I've been able to keep up with. So that leads me to my biggest action step, is just making the big decision to completely shift the balance of what I'm doing with my work. So starting this summer, for the first time since I started teaching, I'm taking the summer off from all teaching. That doesn't mean I won't be working, but I'll be able to devote myself to catching up on everything that Clara gave us to like read and explore and and educate ourselves about, and sharing my students with all of my colleagues. I don't know what everyone else's experience has been, but my experience both in Florida and less so here, but I do know it exists. You know, it's very easy to get caught up in seeing a hierarchy, much like we have in our society, and wanting to climb up in that hierarchy, whether that is in our natal family, or our job scenario, or our community, or the Suzuki world, of wanting to climb and get higher and higher in some hierarchy. And as much as I left Florida because I wanted to be part of a community and wanted to really just focus on teaching and not have to run everything, I'm now, for another reason, taking another left turn and sharing those students, which I'll admit, is at a different point in my career is not something I would have been comfortable doing. I would have felt territorial about sharing my students with other people. And, I know that's just out of a place of fear, maybe that I have on my own, but also fear that I think can be contagious, if we're in a community and surrounded by that type of feeling. It's very easy to buy into that and play that game. So I'm stepping back from being a part of that game and just trying to tune into what difference do I want to make for students that really changes the world. And straight bows and inside corners, I'm going to let other people take a bigger part in that and and focus on some of the bigger picture ideas. Let's see. Some of the, easiest, smallest, immediate steps that I've already been doing are, for instance, because of the Suzuki Early Childhood, part of that program is very much linked with literacy, early literacy and reading. And at the end of every class, the families we have a collection of board books in a bucket, and there's a little bit of reading time, and we also read a book at the end of the class. And so when Clara mentioned these types of visuals that are in our studios, what's the artwork on the wall? What do we have around? I went into our closet of all of our materials, which of course haven't been used here in the building for a year now, and looked at our collection of books. And we have a whole bucket full of board books. And the majority of them, the images are all animals, which there's nothing wrong with that. I love me a great Eric Carle book. But the only ones with children in them, out of all the ones that had children and families in them, there were only 2 books that showed any diversity. Every depiction was of white little kids going about their daily lives. So I have been, ever since that realization, which was probably, I think, week 1 of this class, I've been on a mission. And if anybody's interested, I have developed a whole list. I've been shopping. I've bought all kinds of books to just overhaul the conservatory's supply so that these families have pictures of black and brown babies going to the park, taking a bath. These are what baby books are about, these board books, and just everyday life, because it's not only important for them to see themselves, all the little white kids need to see that there are books with brown people in them too. So that's one project that I've been working on, which I love. I've always loved kids' books. So anybody who is interested in a list of discoveries, leave a note in the chat, because I'm saving the chat. Art on the walls and things, I cannot take credit for this, but I am so fortunate to work for an organization that is jumped on this as an organization immediately this summer. We had protests and marches and demonstrations and mayhem and chaos constantly for months after George Floyd, and much of it right outside my window, and I'm not joking. I live right near the Barclays Center where most of the protests were organized. Anyway, this is something that our organization did immediately. We put out a calendar every year, but what they did was they commissioned local Black and brown artists to provide artwork. And so this is the back of the calendar, so you just get an idea. And so every month is a local Brooklyn-based artist, and their artwork is featured. And this goes out to, well, they're hanging up in the building, but they go out to every family also. So that's a way for us as an organization to support and connect with local artists, and for our students to see that we value that and support them also. The other tangible stuff I'm doing, as Clara has mentioned and has challenged us all to do, is to start fundraising. And I'm working toward partnering with a local church that is literally a 4-minute walk from my apartment. That's very, very socially active and has been for years. It's a church that's been there for a very, very long time and has a rich, rich abolitionist history. I have not joined any of their groups, social action groups, but they are so active and so involved and so thorough that their website alone is an education. And so I have learned so much from them as an organization simply by looking at what they have online. They partnered with us last year. Our ensemble program was only 2 years old. This was a new endeavor. We were in our second year when everything got shut down. But anyway, second year, we more than doubled our numbers of students who wanted to be in ensemble, which meant that we could no longer give a concert in our building because space is very limited. And I had to find a venue, and I liked what this church stood for, and I knew what it looked like already on the inside, and I knew that they could accommodate a group our size. So we've already had students in the building, and so there's the beginnings of a partnership there already, just because we've crossed paths. And so I'm hopeful that that can prove to be, a partnership where they help us identify families who would like to be a part of our program but can't afford it in any way. Another thing that I've not talked about with Clara, but I don't know, I go for walks to clear my head because I live in a tiny apartment, and my husband and I both work from home. And it just suddenly came to me that I actually know a local teacher, a Suzuki teacher, who came to Brooklyn as a refugee. And he just, a year and a half ago, did Suzuki Book 1 teacher training. There was some type of, I was not involved with it, but some kind of community fundraising that helped pay and get him there and did his Book 1 training. So I've reached out to him in just the last few days to say, hey, can you help me? Surely you can help me with organizations that are immigrant and refugee service organizations, and perhaps identify some families in that community as well. He's also someone that I would be interested in mentoring more and getting him more teaching opportunity and work. As I step back from teaching as much, we actually are going to need more. We're going to have a need on our faculty as I cut my load back some. So, what else? Did I answer everything?
I think you did it. Yeah. Thank you. I believe in you, Ruth.
Thank you, Clara.
I believe in you, Ruth.
Even you.
Thank you.
So great. Yay, we did the whole ceremony. Congrats on graduating, GEMS. We solved racism. Just kidding. Okay. But we did 6 weeks of hard work, and we're going to continue on. It's 3:00. We technically have a half an hour left. I'm practicing a thing called less prep, more presence, from the book by Adrienne Marie Brown, which is about emergence that we talk about in GEMS some. So I'm being very present and I have some ideas, but I just want to know what everyone would like to do with the last 30 minutes. Do you want to ask questions about GEMS or give more ideas to the think tank, generate more ideas for equity? I'm also willing to do like a 5-minute kind of overview about studio culture and give some tangible ideas for everyone else who hasn't taken the course yet to start with now for getting yourself closer to your dream studio. What do people want to do? Does anyone have questions? No. Okay. Does anyone who's not a GEM have a tangible idea that they're excited about right now, that they started doing since June or something? Or maybe you've already been doing it for a long time. Okay, do you want me to give you some homework today? And give you, okay, everyone, let's do some work. Okay, and this is kind of like, it'll be a mini, what we do in the first week of GEMS if other people are joining. I'm just gonna give you a little overview of what we're talking about when we, oh wait, Lisa has a question.
Is it wrong to have a scholarship for people but not tell the parents in your studio?
No, I don't
Okay.
think so. Why do they need to know, right? You mean, are you asking because some people are saying they're asking the other parents to compensate and build the scholarship fund?
I haven't done this yet, but I'm just wondering if, yes, I just haven't broached many topics with my studio, and I can guess where a lot of them would fall, and they might be very angry if they knew, but I guess what I do with the money that they give me is none of their business. So I guess.
Oh yeah, I see what you're saying. So if you raise tuition and you're going to decide to put some of it toward a scholarship fund, you have to tell them.
Yeah.
I don't, what do other people shake your head, yes or no, what you think?
Well, I think there's also an issue of privacy. I mean, not that you're hiding anything, but some people might not want others to know they can't afford. I mean, and it's really not everyone's right to know. So that's another thing that you need to weigh in on.
Yeah, oftentimes the breakdown of the tuition isn't public anyway, so I don't think it would be weird. And then Brianna is asking, what point would filing as a not-for-profit be appropriate? Filing as a nonprofit. Okay. So this is something we talked about in GEMS because I am literally dissolving Detroit Youth Volumes nonprofit because it's been very heavy on me since 2014 when we decided to become a nonprofit, and now I'm like going back to what we were before, which is to use a fiduciary to receive grants. So you have a larger organization who has capacity, not you as a little individual who would have to get staff and do a lot of stuff to become a nonprofit. It was too much for me anyway, I'll say. And a larger organization has staff that can send the tax letters to all your donors and can have an online giving page even maybe for you. And they can do all the paperwork and the auditing and all the stuff that comes with having to be a nonprofit, not to mention having to have a board with like minutes that you have to keep track of and like have a certain way of doing the meeting, and has to be a secretary. That there's just a lot of like ways that being a nonprofit, it's like confining. And there's even a quote about and I actually heard it at this Undoing Racism training that I went to once. It's something like, they threw rocks at us, but we kept coming. They called us names, but we kept coming. They gave us a grant and we went away. Because when you get a grant, you have to do the application, you have to do the reporting, you have to like tell them all the numbers from your projects, and it's a lot of paperwork at times. So I'm proposing that we do not all become nonprofits and we use a fiduciary, and the grants that we may go for are going to be small and less than 5 or 10,000. If they have an application process, make sure it's like 2 pages or less, and the reporting is going to be the same way. It's great to have a family foundation that doesn't have a lot of paperwork like that, not a huge thing like Skillman or Knight Foundation. Those are like huge processes to go through to get those grants. And individual donor bases are the way to go with the grassroots fundraising. Is just getting small grants from individuals and getting as many people as you can to give. And you can do that without a nonprofit. For example, a lot of the GEMS are doing Facebook fundraisers. And here's an example of Bertrina's I just put in the chat. And that's, you can just do that as an individual. You can tell your friends like Venmo me or whatever. It is a little trickier as an individual to set up monthly giving, which is also amazing, having sustaining donors that you know how much they're going to give annually because they give the same amount monthly. And Detroit Youth Following Me has about 17 people that do that for us. And then we have a couple small grants that we get annually. And that's enough to cover 9 full scholarships and my administrative work, which is like 10 or 12 hours a week on top of my teaching. So I work 25 hours total every week, and I get tuition for like some of that, you know. And I do have to do a lot of fundraising, but it's possible. And I love my studio and I made it this way and I'm proud of it. So I want you all to be super proud of your studios in this way too, and be successful and have it be community supported without having to do a heavy nonprofit. And if so, a fiduciary is a good idea. It seems like some people want to add to this, like Ed.
No, I want to ask a question. When the families, like your monthly donors, are they able to write it off as a tax write-off, their donation, if they're not giving it to a nonprofit? They still can?
No, they can't.
Okay, so they're just doing it just to do it.
Yeah.
It's the trade-off.
Yeah. And Abby might have a question.
I was just going to say that I've used a fiscal sponsor before, and that is a way that families can have the tax write-off. So if you're able to do it that way through a nonprofit, then that, if that's a motivation for some families, that can be a good option. I don't know a lot about that, but I'm happy to share what I do know with anyone.
Yeah, Fractured Atlas is a good one. And also Music Link, I just heard about, might be able to be used as a fiduciary. And people are asking about recruitment of new students. And this is like something that we talk about in week 2 of the GEMS course. But the basic idea is that you would partner with a local organization that already serves a community that would diversify your studio, and you ask them for 2 things. You want people to refer kids that they know have great attendance and great parent communication, because those are the minimum things that you need for them to succeed in Suzuki. And I have to say that I am into Suzuki in the schools and different ways of doing Suzuki, but I still do believe in the Suzuki triangle in a way too. And because I've seen it, my students succeed regardless of income. And regardless of income, there's still some parents who are able to participate in meaningful, super deep ways. But you can tell which of those parents can do it by getting those referrals from people who already know those families. Do they have good communication with you? Are they able to get their kid to show up at your program currently? And that's how you'll be able to tell. It's not like, so then you're not being blind about finding the kids. Yes. Lisa?
My issue is that my program is not near like the youth orchestras. There are two major youth orchestras in Portland, Oregon, and I'm not near them. So that's why I asked that question. I guess schools, there isn't much music in the schools where I live in Beaverton. So that's why it's a little bit of a challenge.
Just any youth program. They're going to have kids that are interested in taking lessons.
That gives me ideas. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And then you're not conflicting with whatever other music stuff those kids might be involved in. Maybe the kids that you're reaching out to might not have any access to any music things. Okay. Yes, Lisa?
Sorry, I had one other question, and maybe this is not the proper time, but I was wondering, Ed Kreitman, how your teacher training, if it differs when you're in Brazil from how you teach here in the States.
Oh, you mean when he facilitates it?
Yeah, it's Brazil is part of the SAA, so our courses requirements are the same. We generally add a few more hours, well, actually a lot more hours because the course has to be translated. And depending on who my translator is, there's some that I've worked with for years and they can do simultaneous translation because as soon as I start to say a sentence, they know what I'm going to say. So they just start saying it. When Fabio's translating for me, he can do that. But if it's somebody new, then it's like I speak, they speak, I say, it takes forever. And then the other thing is that the observation lessons, even if they're video, which they often are, they also have to be translated and there's a lot of stop and start. So I'm actually doing those hours with the class as well. And sometimes the observations are live, students there. But otherwise, basically, I'm teaching them the skills and then they're processing it and figuring out how they're going to, incorporate that work into their situation, whatever that is. And one of the teacher who is the head of the program at the Beccarelli Institute, his name is Jose Marcio Galvo. He is doing teacher training, which he calls collective teaching. And he's teaching people how to incorporate Suzuki, and all of his teaching is really based on the priorities from my book, Teaching from the Balance Point. And he is developed a whole curriculum around that. And he's teaching other teachers how to do that. And it was my greatest honor and privilege this summer to sit on his online collective course for 6 days and watch him work with teachers in Brazil. And the translation was going the other way, which was really cool. It was being translated back to English. So it's, for me, I feel like I try to modify somewhat, but I feel like I have to fulfill the requirement of the curriculum that we're teaching. So, and often some of the teachers in the course are teaching in a more traditional Suzuki manner where, they're seeing kids and families together. But if I could just keep talking about this, I'm really interested in the SAA developing. So we have the regular teacher training and now we have Suzuki in the schools. We need Suzuki in social programs, especially if we're going to continue to be the Suzuki Association of the Americas and not just the United States. Because even though we don't have the same kind of social programs here that they do in South America, we still need to develop a curriculum for that kind of teaching. And, in fact, I would say the curriculum already exists if they could just take what they're doing there and make that available to everybody. So
write an email to your local SAA board member or whatever. That's part of everyone's homework.
Can I follow up at just one question for Ed? Hi, Ed. Sorry. I'm wondering. I believe you had said earlier that you were expanding in your teacher training, you were expanding beyond the triangle. You were working on teaching training your teachers in those programs to go beyond that and to work beyond that. Is that just in Brazil, or is that also in the US?
No, it's especially in the US. So what I did is at the last conference that we had in Minneapolis, I gave a presentation. Well, I actually introduced Jose Marcio, and we together did a presentation. And the topic of the presentation was teaching priorities, how they work in two very different environments. And I basically didn't say anything about how they worked in my school because everybody at the conference knows our program. But you know, we described the situation. Okay, this is in a place where the kids have every advantage. Now, can we take the same thing and teach it in a completely different environment? And what are the results? And of course, we had loads of video demonstrations of the students there, and it was great. So I took that program, the PowerPoint that we used for that, and embedded all the videos. And I spend 1 hour of every book one teacher training class presenting that to the teachers so that they can see this is another way that we can be presenting Suzuki teaching, and in a very different environment and with very different priorities, and still be getting excellent results and still be focusing on the excellence of the teaching and the nurturing of the children, because it's so clear there that that's what they're doing. So yeah, that will be a part of everything I do from now on.
That's really good, because that's a huge question for me. I'm in Baltimore, and there is definitely a culture of not a lot of parental involvement. And then when you compound that with trying to make this accessible for families where you really have to honor the parents' inability to be there. They may be working 2 or 3 jobs. They may have a lot of siblings, younger siblings to take care of. It can be just too difficult.
Yeah.
So just practical considerations for how to get that done. I'm wondering if maybe I can reach out to you later and see
Sure.
what you're
Yeah.
doing. Thanks.
Yep.
Personal coaching opportunity. Ed has a new class. Just kidding. You could though. Actually, I encourage everyone to do an online class because there's something that you're really good at that a bunch of other people want to know about. And I figured that out this year. And I just turned 37 on Wednesday and was just looking back at like my 36th year and being like, oh, this whole 36th year was about kind of figuring out that I needed to do GEMS, and that what I've been doing for the past years is like worthy of telling other people about. So I'm so happy that Pam wrote a crappy letter and it started everything up. Thank you, Pam. Everyone has a role to play. And actually, she's the one who invited me to make this course, an enrichment course officially on the Suzuki Association website. So it's great. Things are moving. So it's 3:24 now. The thing that I was going to teach you guys and the homework I was going to give you, I'm just going to give it to you so you have time to do your survey, which I put in the chat and linked into the chat in case you have a 3:30 lesson. So sorry, I wasn't being very clear. About studio culture, the first thing that we did as GEMS to create kind of like nurture having a set of known values that dictates how our studios will function as a community of people and an organization was to take the action step of posting an anti-racist statement on our websites or on our Facebook About page, or like wherever you have information about your studio. Because people want to find you and they want to know where there are Suzuki studios, where their kids are going to be safe, where they're going to feel safe, where they're going to have an environment that is diverse and support their kids in the best way to go into the world as adults someday. But they need you to say it for them to know. So here is the one that Detroit Youth Volume has on our, oops, I just sent it to Lisa instead of everybody. This is the one Detroit Youth Volume has on our website. So in addition to having like art on your wall and books that have representation of all ethnicities and culture and race and gender and family structures, you know, all the things, abilities, you can include in your language something like this. And it doesn't have to be, we included pro-Black on ours because Detroit is 80% Black. So that made a lot of sense for us to add that. And you can like Google around and see, kind of figure out why we might have wanted to add that in addition to anti-racist, why we added pro-Black. But that is my homework to you. Your free homework without signing up for the GEMS course that you get to go do. And it doesn't have to be this, that's just an example. You can change the language, but just think about this week, is there anything that I could add to the way that I talk about my studio that would bring more students and families to me, that are going to make me feel like I'm seen for who I really am and the values that I really have. It's not just about like, we're not doing this work just for the children and to make the world a better place, but it's our world too. And white supremacy hurts everyone. And we just need to do what we can to create this little place in our life where we can go there for a certain number of hours every day. And we're in like this dream world where we have like a diverse community of people that are on the same page in terms of social justice and working together and practicing living in this world that we all want. And we can make it happen right now. We just have to be brave enough to do it and figure out the strategies to do it where we don't have to be poor and we can still feed our families and provide scholarships and do all the things we want to do. So I believe in you all. And what we usually do at the end of the class is just to blow out our candle. And we say, thank you for teaching me at the end. So we're going to blow out our candle.
Clara,
Yeah.
before you do that, can all the GEMS thank you, please?
Okay, of course.
Full amazing course that you put together, and you've given us so much, and I'm sure everybody just is feeling so enriched by this, and thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you so much,
Yes.
Clara.
I believe in you, Clara.
Aw.
I believe in you, Clara.
I'm gonna miss you guys so much, but we'll talk again, of course. So I'm blowing out the candle. I'm gonna sit down, and I always do a bow at my violin lessons too, and I tell my students I'm bowing and saying thank you for teaching me because you helped me be a better teacher today too. So thank you for teaching me, and go ahead and make sure you do your survey, and hopefully I'll be in touch with all of you if we haven't talked yet. March and April, I'm open to chatting with any prospective GEMS or any other ideas My email address is clara@detroityouthvolume.org. And thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.